Overpaying for anything sucks, especially socks, so why pay $45 for a single pair of grip socks when you can spend less than half? Pure Grip Socks Pro feature our best materials for optimal fit, moisture wicking, and performance at a fair price, just $16.99 a pair at puregripsocks.com.
Well, if you're not a fan of the spiky Predator era, you're in luck, because it looks like the spikes are no more. Almost 2 years ago now, Adidas launched the Predator 20 Plus Mutator, a football boot covered in rubber spikes that probably made the biggest impact for a Predator model since the Adi Power, which came out all the way back in 2011. Since then, the hype has died down significantly, and I'm not sure how many people out there are still considering the Predator when picking out a brand new pair of boots, which, while I really like this concept and I think it's one of the most effective technologies in football boots right now, it's probably time for some change, and we're already seeing pros training in what is the next generation of Adidas Predator. So in the name of speculation, we're going to break down a bunch of different images of these next generation Predators, and I'll do my best to give you a pretty decent idea of what to expect from a football boot that will likely be releasing sooner rather than later. If you guys enjoyed these boot spotting videos and perhaps would like to see more of them on the channel, please don't forget to support this one with a like. And also guys, I have a goal of hitting 750,000 subscribers on the channel by the end of the year. So for those of you that watch the content, enjoy it, but maybe aren't subbed, it would mean the world to me if you could hit that subscribe button along with the little bell notification so you get notified when the next new video goes live. So first things first, no more spikes, which appears to be a really drastic design change, and I think it is, but I don't think the concept behind what the boot is supposed to offer from a feel and performance characteristics perspective is actually going to change that much. In place of spikes are what, I guess, dare I say, are more traditional looking rubber striking / control elements that are scattered across the majority of the upper. So you're still getting plenty of coverage with what I'm assuming are rubber elements that are in turn going to provide a ton of additional grip on the ball. It's kind of reminiscent of what we used to see from the Predator series back in the LZ1, LZ2, and Instinct days. So I expect there to still be a significant amount of grip. The question is, how sticky is this rubber? Because if you look through the history of rubber striking elements on Predator models, in the earlier days, the rubber was a little bit harder and provided a little bit less grip, where obviously in more recent memory, they use much softer rubber that grips the ball much more aggressively. How grippy these Predators will be, that remains to be seen. With that said, I really like the look of this striking element design, where you have these fins that are kind of curving around the striking area of the foot. It reminds me a little bit of the T90 Laser 1, T90 Laser 2, even the Mizuno Wave Ignitus 3, to make a more obscure comparison, kind of had a similar type of look to it. And again, the type of rubber is going to have a huge impact on how this feels. If they go for a less sticky, harder rubber, the boot's going to have a more solid feel on impact when you strike the ball, where if they go for a stickier, softer rubber like they're using right now, the boot could feel completely different than any other football boot or Predator that we've seen before it. Nonetheless, if you're like me and kind of were hoping for a more traditional style of Predator striking element, it looks like we're getting it back in the next generation. What is also going to have a big impact on the feel of these football boots is the material of the upper, and I know there's a lot of longtime Predator fans that have been screaming for the return of kangaroo leather Predators, or just leather Predators in general. It doesn't look like that's going to be the case based on these images. I'm going to guess that this is still a knit-based synthetic material, likely prime knit on both the laceless and laced variation, which I'm assuming will still maintain the plus N.1 naming system. Nonetheless, I am hoping for improvements in this area, where I really hope they go for a prime knit base that ends up being a little bit softer, has a little bit of additional padding to it, and ultimately just feels more sock-like on your feet. I think the downfall of the prime knit upper found on the current Predator Freak, and even the Predator 20 Plus that came before it, is that it's just too thin and feels almost like a rigid synthetic rather than a soft sock-like knit material, which I think is what you expect when you hear the words prime knit. And given that they're going for a more traditional striking element rather than these spikes, I think they can afford to introduce a little bit of padding, not just to make the boots feel different from their other options from a thickness perspective, but just to make the boot feel more comfortable on your feet in general. If I wanted super thin boots, I would probably go for the Speed Flow anyway, so I'm hoping they don't make these super thin like the current Preds. Something else we see in these images are different upper variations of the new Predator, where of course there is going to be a laceless model, which looks to be a mid-cut version of the boot, likely to be the only laceless option for this next-gen Predator. And then in a laced 0.1 variation, as we can probably assume, it looks like they're going to do a mid-cut and a low-cut variation. Basically, the same setup the Predator has had for the last 2 generations, none of which is all that surprising. What I think is very interesting though, the lace models look pretty ordinary, but the laceless model looks to have a very different fastening system where there's a lot less exposed elasticated prime knit material across the top of the foot. We obviously don't know what's happening internally, if anything at all, but it looks like there's a lot less area across the top of the foot on this new laceless Predator that has the ability to stretch, which is promising from a lockdown perspective, because the more area across the top of the foot that is stretchy, the more there's potential for the upper to expand while you're running around, which in turn will affect the lockdown and kind of responsiveness of the football boot in a negative way. So there could be complications in regards to fit and actually making it more difficult to put on versus the previous Predator with this new model. But I'm optimistic with this design change and really curious to see how these are going to fit. Fit being another area where Adidas could make some huge changes that I think a lot of people would appreciate. With the Predator 20 and the Predator Freak, they opted for this more traditional Predator shaping where it's cut a little bit slimmer through the midfoot and then wider through the forefoot and toe box area. I think given the type of upper material that they've gone for here, this more rigid knit synthetic, I don't think that this shape is the best in terms of fitting really well as just being super comfortable. So I'm hoping they modify the shape of this new Predator for something that is not necessarily slimmer or not necessarily wider, but I think a shape that's just a little bit more modern. I don't love the fit of the current Predators, and I think that's something they could definitely tweak with this new generation. However, we won't know if they've done that until we actually get a chance to try them on. Which brings us to the base of these new Predators, where it appears to have all new tooling, most notably no more external heel counter at the rear, which isn't really a huge thing, but I personally just prefer the look and feel of an external heel counter. Looks to be gone on this next generation, and it's really difficult to say based on the pictures that are out there so far, but I'm going to assume that it is still a split sole construction, maybe with a little bit less plastic than what we have on this current one. Not sure if the cutouts remain, but you can also get a pretty good look at the stud pattern, which looks to be very similar to what's found on the current Predator. It's the same layout of studs that we're used to seeing from the Adidas brand. These look to be slightly more aggressive in terms of having this kind of bladed triangle shape, so maybe it's going to be a slight improvement over what we have right now. But in general, just based on it being the same Adidas layout that we've had basically for the last decade, I don't think there's going to be too many gains when it comes to sole plates and stud patterns, other than possibly this new sole plate being a lot lighter than the current one. It'd be sweet if they could implement some form of carbon fiber like they have on the Speedflow line, but I'm mostly anticipating a sole plate made entirely of plastic. Which brings us to the final question I'm sure you want answered. When are they going to be available and how much will they cost? Well, in regards to pricing, I'm going to assume the Plus model, which is the laceless version, will probably still be $275, and the 0.1 laced models will probably maintain the same $250 price tag. I don't see them going up, and I certainly don't see them going down in price. As far as a release date is concerned, again, we're coming up on 2 years in January. I think potentially right around the same time in 2022 is probably when we might see this next generation Predator, but a lot of these big brands don't seem to have fixed release dates with these boots anymore. So if these were to come out in early December or something like that, I wouldn't be all that surprised. just understand that they're probably going to come out in the next couple of months. And there you have it. Hopefully you enjoyed a little bit of boot speculation. If you did, be sure to support it with a like. If you have any observations of your own or any questions about these boots regarding anything that I talked about in this video, feel free to leave it down in the comment section. If you are not subscribed to the channel already, make sure you hit that subscribe button along with the little bell notification so you get notified when the next new video goes live. You can find all my social media information linked down below in the description as well. And other than that, guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.